I now call up H.R. 3951, the Rural Veterans Improvement Access to Benefits Act. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 3951 to
The bill
amend.
was circulated in advance and pursuant to committee rules, and without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is open to amendment at any point. And I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to speak in favor of the legislation. The bill would extend the license portability authority for contracted medical professionals conducting compensation and pension examinations until 2031. The C&P exams are important, but they also extend an already lengthy process. This problem is made even worse when veterans are forced to travel far distances for their exams. Congress created the temporary license of portability to extend examinations authority to a wider variety of contracted medical professionals who have expertise in performing the C&P exams. By ensuring more contract medical professionals are able to perform C&P exams, VA is better able to serve veterans in underserved and rural communities. We cannot allow this program to sunset. It is a lifeline for our nation's remote veterans and who often live hundreds of miles away from a VA facility and near only small number of medical professionals. This bill would also expand the eligibility specialties of contracted medical professionals currently covered. Under current law, license portability only applies to physician assistants, nurse practitioners, audiologists, and psychologists. This bill would expand the authority to include providers who are eligible for employment in certain healthcare positions in the VHA. This is a necessary expansion to the C&P exam program. If a medical professional would be eligible for employment at the VA healthcare facility, they should also be able to serve veterans closer to their home. This bill would also require VA to submit a report to Congress on the frequency, timeliness, legal adequacy, and associated cost of C&P exams performed by contractors. I thank Representative Scamani for his leadership on the bill and his efforts to increase accessibility to exams for our nation's veterans. Does any other member wish to comment on the bill? Seeing none. Does any member wish to offer an amendment to H.R. 3951?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
I now recognize Representative Ramirez to purposes of amendment. You have amendment at that.
Thank you, Chairman.
You have an
I have
amendment.
an amendment at the desk.
The clerk shall report the amendment.
Ramirez Amendment
I ask
number 1.
unanimous consent that further reading of the amendment is dispensed with without objection, so ordered. I now recognize Representative Ramirez for 5 minutes to speak in support of the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. My amendment would reverse the illegal and immoral actions taken by President Trump and Secretary Collins that effectively revoked collective bargaining rights from thousands of VA employees. As we learned yesterday at my Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee hearing, the VA needs to do more, not less, to make the agency a place where people want to work and they want to grow their careers. I'm alarmed by the level of attrition we are seeing at the VA from veteran-facing employees. Let me tell you a little bit more about that. Over 7,500 doctors, nurses, psychologists, claim examiners, and more have left the VA on their own volition since the beginning of the fiscal year. These are employees who could not partake in the deferred resignation program or early retirement. I want to be very clear that the employees who are leaving are not employees subject to the hiring freeze. Let me say that again. The employees who are leaving the VA are not employees subject to the hiring freeze. They are leaving on their own because under the leadership of Secretary Collins, the VA has become for them a hostile and toxic environment for its employees. The level of loss we're documenting is not sustainable if we intend to deliver the benefits and care our veterans have earned and they deserve. Furthermore, the loss of VA employees will impact the delivery of care and benefits for veterans, and it's already negatively impacting veterans' experience, regardless of what the Secretary continues to claim. Workplace rights, including the right to collectively bargain, have been enshrined in the law for decades. Unions make VA a better place to work and a better place for veterans to receive their care, period. When implementing President Trump's executive order that aimed to abolish collective bargaining at the VA, Secretary Collins, in essence, made it clear that he was going after his and Trump's political enemies. Simply put, some employees at certain facilities would get to keep their collective bargaining agreements, while others who may work at a VA down the street would not. I mean, how do we decide? Loyalty to the administration? That is completely unacceptable and is just another way that this administration seeks to suppress resistance and dissent. Trump and his Justice Secretary Collins are deciding that the unions that dared challenge the president in court were to be stripped of their worker rights. The rights that I may add were enshrined in legislation by this Congress. I will not stand by while the rights of VA workers who show up day in and day out to care for our veterans are trampled on. I'm not going to stand by and watch the continued demonization and demoralization of the VA workforce. And it's why I'm offering this amendment today to make it clear that this committee demands the reinstatement of collective bargaining rights for every VA worker. I urge all my colleagues to vote yes on my amendment. And with that, Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. I recognize myself in opposition to the amendment. This amendment would reinstate the Federal Workers Collective Bargaining Agreement with the VA that was terminated by the President's March executive order. As a union firefighter, I have long recognized the need for strong labor relations. However, I believe it is inappropriate for Congress to weigh in on this matter or tie the hands of the Secretary during an ongoing litigation. This amendment is a poison pill that would risk the passage of this very important underlying bill. I will vote no on this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Does any other member wish to comment? Ranking member.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and before I begin my comments, I just want to have the record reflect that the author of H.R. 3951 is not present at the committee, and we're setting a precedent here whereby we can continue with the business of the markup with that fact. I would just say we hope that, that in the future that there'll be a similar consideration for the minority in cases like this. Yes. I will keep my comments brief in support of Congresswoman Ramirez's amendment, but I do feel compelled to buttress her sentiments. When I was a public school teacher, I was a member of a union, as you were a member of the firefighters union. I know firsthand the power of unions and the important role they serve to protect workers' rights. VA is losing employees at a record pace, and it isn't just losing employees to the deferred resignation program or early retirement. Veteran-facing employees. So we're not just talking about the doctors and nurses who face veterans, but it's the doctors, nurses, and claims examiners, police officers, and social workers. These are also veteran-facing employees, not just the doctors and nurses, but claim examiners, police officers, social workers. They're leaving in droves due to the working conditions at VA. A net 7,500 of these mission-critical employees have left VA on their own volition in this fiscal year. I worry that working conditions are leading these employees to choose to leave their jobs at VA. Without unions to help address the workplace concerns that they have, I fear these employees are left with few avenues of redress and are stuck choosing between staying in a toxic work environment and leaving a job they love. The right to collectively bargain, sir, is the law, and it is absolutely Congress's role to ensure that the president and his appointees are following the law. And try to wash our hands of it and say, well, we don't want to interfere with the secretary and all of that. No. It is our job as the Oversight Committee to ensure that the Secretary follows the law. And the right to collectively bargain is the law. And to do less is to step back and allow the executive to do things outside the law. The right to collectively bargain is also integral to improving working conditions, to VA's ability, to improve working conditions such that VA's ability to recruit and retain employees is enhanced. There is simply no denying that good working conditions are tied to collective bargaining. Veterans deserve a strong VA that is fully staffed by employees who feel empowered and supported by its leadership. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on Congresswoman Ramirez's amendment to restore collective bargaining agreements at VA, and with that, I yield back.
Anyone else seeking recognition? Ms. Brzezinski.
I just want to voice my strong support for Congresswoman Ramirez's amendment. I, too, want to just echo what our ranking member said, that collective bargaining rights are the law, and it is something that is critically important that we make sure as a committee is being enforced. We know that collective bargaining and the erosion of it at the VA is largely contributing to the morale issues that I hear about in my district. The fear, the toxic environment, the direct assault on collective bargaining rights of the workers that are at the VA, I think is contributing significantly to that environment and leading to a lot of employees leaving in droves, those same employees that we really need to administer the benefits that the veterans have deserved. And I lastly just want to point out that, you know, a lot of the workforce within the VA are veterans themselves. And I think that's a really important point, that those veterans deserve the right to have collective bargaining, just like all the other workforce employees do at the VA, but that this is critically important to maintaining morale and a good work environment to help provide services to our veterans. So thank you. I yield back.
Anyone else seeking recognition? Seeing none, the question now occurs on agreeing to the Ramirez Amendment Number 1 to H.R. 3951. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not
Chairman.
agreed to.
I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote being requested is in accordance with the committee rules. Further proceedings on this matter will be postponed. I recognize Representative Ramirez for the purpose of offering Ramirez Amendment Number 2.
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk shall report the amendment.
Ramirez Amendment Number 2, amendment to
I
H.R.
ask unanimous consent that further reading of this amendment is dispensed with, and without objection so ordered. I now recognize Representative Ramirez for 5 minutes to speak on the support of her amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. This amendment specifically would bar VA from contracting with any company with which a special government employee, you know the kind of employee I'm talking about, has a financial interest. Over the past several months, we have witnessed the rampant corruption of individuals, including in DOGE. These individuals were given access to sensitive information. They made reckless decisions across the agency, and they put thousands of people at risk. This kind of rogue behavior is appalling, and it should concern every American taxpayer and certainly every single member in this committee. Did I get ahead of myself because I want to protect
I think
the
you're on the
people
wrong amendment,
from
yeah. I'll have to restack my response.
Wait a minute, I wasn't ready for that one, right? Oh, sorry. They were together.
Yeah. Okay.
you.
How about,
Well,
how about,
listen.
how about you're recognized for this amendment?
So the question is, can you restore me back to 5? I appreciate that grace. Thank you. All right. So do we need a, Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will clarify, yes, we'll designate the amendment.
Ramirez Amendment Number 2, amendment to H.R. 3951.
I ask unanimous consent for the reading of the amendment is dispensed with without objection, so ordered. I now recognize the Representative Ramirez for 5 minutes to speak on this amendment.
Thank you. I might even go under 5 just as a thank you here. Thank you, Chairman. More than once, I've called this committee to recognize the diversity, the beautiful diversity of our veterans. And the diverse veterans in the communities that we represent need access to the full benefits that they have earned and deserve. This amendment specifically addresses equity and access to benefits for all of our veterans. In the past 6 months, the administration has waged a war on equity, trying to make the word taboo and to roll back the progress we've made to ensure equal access to federal programs and services. The administration has made excuses when veterans who have worn the uniform, have put their lives on the line, go without access to benefits and services that they were promised. Who am I talking about, you may be asking yourself? Well, I'm talking about people of color. I'm talking about women. I'm talking about immigrants, yes, because there are veterans who've been deported. LGBTQ plus folks, the elderly, individuals that live in rural communities, and all the other veterans who served and earned their veterans. Too often in this committee, my colleagues talk about how important data is to effectively and comprehensively address the problems that the department is addressing. Yet this administration has eliminated many of the offices and positions focused on collecting and analyzing data to address where gaps may exist in the VA care and benefits for veterans, especially for diverse veterans. One of the offices Secretary Collins has chosen to shutter is the Office of Equity Assurance. We call it the OEA. This office was established following a 2023 GAO report that found that Black veterans' benefit approval rates had a persistent bias in disability compensation. Since the OEA was established, it has made efforts to address data gaps for veterans, conducted outreach in rural communities, and forged partnerships with academic affiliates to increase the VA's capacity to reach these areas. However, following President Trump's executive order targeting diversity, targeting equity, and targeting inclusion across the federal government, this office was actually closed. OEA's employees have been placed in administrative leave by Secretary Collins. This decision to close the office has not resulted in cost savings or liberation from radical ideology, as they call it, but instead it condemns us to ignorance by ensuring we have even less insight into where the gaps for VA care and benefits are. But perhaps that's the point. What this amendment does, it calls for the immediate reinstatement of the Office of Equity Assurance and its employees. With my amendment, I am also calling for the Office of Equity Assurance to resume the critical work it has done to address disparities in benefits, disparities in outreach, and other services that the VA provides. Ensuring each and every single veteran gets what they have earned should not, and friends, it cannot be political. I urge all of my colleagues to join me in supporting this work to reach veterans who I know reside in each and one of our districts. And with that, Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlemen, gentlelady yields back. I recognize myself in opposition to the amendment. This amendment would direct the Secretary to permanently reinstate the VBA Office of Equity Assurance and require biannual congressional briefings. I support efforts to ensure that VA provides the highest quality service to all veterans. But veterans is a veteran is a veteran. We all proudly fought for the same flag and fought to protect the same freedoms. When veterans return to civilian life, it is the VA's responsibility to meet veterans where they are. I do not support forcing the Secretary to reinstate an office that would divide veterans. Equity is not equality. As a Marine, I know a rising tide lifts all ships. Veterans deserve a VA that champions the equality they fought for. I trust Secretary Collins' view that this office hinders our mission of serving our nation's diverse veterans and survivors. I will vote no on the amendment, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Who else? Does anyone else seek recognition? Ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in May, I hosted a roundtable that discussed many of the topics impacting minority veterans, and one of which was the closure of the Office of Equity Assurance, or OEA. It was extremely apparent from this gathering of 12 organizations and several former VA employees that OEA was doing incredibly valuable work to reach not only veterans of color, but women veterans, those in rural communities, and in many cases, veterans who are not connected to VA care or services. It is absolutely imperative that the Office of Equity Assurance and its employees are reinstated and are able to resume their critical work. I urge all of my colleagues to support Congresswoman Ramirez's amendment in giving VA the resources to reach all veterans where they are. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does anyone else seek recognition? Seeing none. The question now occurs on agreeing to Ramirez Amendment Number 2 to H.R. 3951. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. The motion to reconsider is laid on.
I request a recorded vote, Chairman.
A recorded vote has been requested in accordance with the committee rules, and further proceedings on this matter will be postponed. Are there any further amendments to H.R. 3951? Seeing none and hearing none, it is now in order to consider the next bill because the amendments are pending votes. So,